But most of the time, it's like we're allowing men to say that they're women, and then we're allowing men into women's spaces, sometimes in prisons or bathrooms or other places where I feel like they could have nefarious reasons. Because it doesn't mean that they have to be medicalized. Because if we're going at gender ID, they can be any man. And this has happened to me in real life, where I enter a bathroom and there's a 6'3" construction worker who says they're a woman with a penis. I don't necessarily feel comfortable in that situation.
Let's say all pronouns were genderless. Would you reject a world where all pronouns were genderless?
I don't think we can rewrite the rules of the English language and have everyone learn a whole new system just to validate the identities of a tiny few.
Anyone of any age should be allowed to physically express themselves however they want. Move. Okay, decide amongst yourselves who you want to come and do the disagree, and why don't you move to the agree, please? Okay.
Would you like to start?
Okay, there was a time when I would have been over there. The reason I'm standing here, I don't know, surely this story made it to the US, is in Ontario there was the teacher who was showing up to school wearing these ginormous fetish breasts. And so he basically put me here. There are limits to free expression in how you dress, I think.
What is it about a teacher wearing gigantic breasts that you think was inappropriate?
I don't believe fetish gear belongs in a classroom or in public. So I don't think you can go around wearing a GIMP mask or anything that's inappropriately sexual.
For me, when I hear that, what comes to mind is that we as adults read things into that wear that children, I don't think, will. And I wonder why we react so negatively to those things if there's not actions or harm that's associated with them.
Do you know who I'm talking about?
I do not.
Yeah, I can tell. Okay, we're not talking normal but large fake breasts. We're talking, honestly, I'm not exaggerating. Mm-hmm. And he was a shop teacher using a sword, so there's health and safety issues there as well. But we're talking really, truly enormous, only could possibly be for fetish purposes.
And what effect do you imagine that has on children? Do you imagine that they conceptualize what fetish means?
It's not even just children. It's nobody should be walking around dressed like that. For adults, children, I would be deeply offended if I came across a man, and it's a man, of course, who claims to be a woman, wearing these.
In my view, I would have to examine, if I had a negative reaction to that, what was triggering my negative reaction? And is there really a harm to having somebody have an outsized expression of themselves? I don't see where the harm is there. Now, of course, I don't know this case. There may be extenuating circumstances. You say maybe there was a health and safety issue with using the equipment. I mean, if that were true, that could be a concern. But in terms of just expressing themselves, or let's take a similar thing, high school kids coming to school as a furry, I think that's up to them to decide how they express themselves. And I'd need to hear an argument to change my mind that would show that there was a harm.
Okay, so the 3 minutes are up, and you moved.
I did.
What argument caused you to move?
When Mia was talking about the breasts, not particularly that moved me, but in my mind I thought like, hey, there's more nuance to this that I hadn't considered. So I was thinking like, hey, my daughter's gonna go to elementary school someday. I wouldn't want a teacher to express themselves in certain ways that would be inappropriate to that profession.
All right, new claim. Anyone of any age should be allowed to physically express themselves however they want in private. Move. anyone of any age should be allowed to physically express themselves however they want in public. Move. Okay, slightly agree, go to the slightly agree, and strongly disagree, go to the strongly disagree.
So my position broadly is it depends on whether I'm compelled to be there. If I'm compelled to be there for work or school or prison or some similar situation, I should not be subjected to somebody performing a sexual fetish, and because I would consider that a sexually hostile environment, and I have a right to not have that in schools and workplaces. In the broader public, I favor a much broader right to express yourself in a non-obscene way. But places of compulsory attendance, no, regardless of if they're public or not, you shouldn't have a right to just dress however you want. There should be reasonable restrictions to make it so that other people aren't harassed by the behavior.
I like that argument, and as a matter of fact, the reason that I moved from agree to slightly agree on the last go-round is I don't think I've really gotten my mind completely around the full range of what that expression could be. I had spoken on a previous claim about the concept of harm, and I think understanding when there is harm is important. Now, I am a manager in a Fortune 500 company, and when I think about things like sexual harassment, hostile environment, I think about things that are more associated with actions and less about representations. And so I think I would need to see more examples of things that could be harmful and then be able to have a conversation about specific cases to really further solidify my thinking on the matter.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think that there's, to go back to Mia's example of the shop teacher with the giant fake breasts, he didn't wear those outside of it. And was caught doing that. And so it was just, you asked what the harm was for the kids. The kids are having to contemplate the fact that their male teacher is wearing this costume. And why is he wearing that costume? And so that's where I feel like the harassment comes in. If somebody has modified their body physically and that's just how their body is shaped now, I think that's a different story. But somebody who's wearing an elaborate fetish costume, I don't think they should be allowed to teach children. I think that there should be reasonable restrictions on that, because if it's so important for them to wear the fetish costume, are they really focused on being an educator? That seems like a reasonable sacrifice. What
is it about the fetish costume that you find offensive or that you believe would be offensive?
Because I believe it represents that the man is in a state of self-stimulation, and so he is preoccupied by that, and you can pick up on that. You can pick up on the behaviors and the speech patterns, and just you have to be aware of the fact that they're if it's similar if somebody's reaching really deep in their pocket and you're aware of the fact that you don't really know what their hand is doing, and it's creepy.
Okay, so we're out of time.
Okay.
I have a new claim. Men should be allowed to walk around in shorts with a massive dildo in their shorts to make it look as if they have an enormous erection. They should be allowed to walk around in public and take public transportation as they like. Move.
I think I'm still here. Should we be on outer mats or here?
No, you're good.
So I'll move over to agree there.
Okay, go to the absolutely disagree and step back, please. Why do you absolutely disagree with that?
I think in the same way that I don't think we should all be having sex in public, I think overt, deliberate sexual displays are not an acceptable way to behave in a decent society.
I agree that overt sexual displays are a problem in a decent society. My issue, the reason I'm on agree, is because with the issue of public transit, you're in the general public, there you come to the issue of how do you know what that bulge is? And who's going to be enforcing that, and do they have a right against reasonable unreasonable search and seizure? Whereas if you're in a school, then it's different, because you have to think about what inferences the children are making, because they have to be there. Whereas you don't necessarily have to take your kids on public transit, or if you do, you can get off and wait for them. There's just other things you can do, and it's just, I consider that a lower level of restriction.
Right. I'm not going at all with policing, how you can tell whether it's real or not. I'm going with, should he do it? Is it acceptable for him to do it? And I think it's just not. Also, sometimes, you have to take public transport. Normally you're taking it because you need to get somewhere. I don't see that you can just get off because there's a man with a massive dildo in his trousers.
Sorry. Oh my God. I can't believe
But
I
what
do
if he's
this
just
for
well
life.
endowed? What if he's got a medical condition and he has this uncontrollable erection that's lasted longer than 4 hours?
Priapism.
Right, but the question is, he specifically has a massive dildo.
So you can tell, you can
not
see like
about
the insignia on the
or
side.
not. Yeah, it's
through the
whether
clothes,
he
okay.
in the morning puts massive dildo in his trousers and then goes about his day.
Straight to jail. No trial.
But I don't think that's. I'm still here.
Are you still, did they say anything to convince you to move?
No.
Okay, so now make the connection to me. How is wearing fake prosthetic breasts different than a man walking around with an enormous dildo while he has shorts?
One is in a school with children and one is in the public.
Yeah.
So then the
That's the
distinction
difference
should
for
be
me.
the public-private distinction.
Yeah.
Compulsory versus non-compulsory. Like, do you have the right to leave the situation?
Okay, got it. All right, everybody reset to neutral. The concept of a gender identity should be taught in schools. The concept of a gender identity should be taught in schools. Move. Okay, go to the strongly agree, and why don't you decide among yourselves who would like to go?
Who wants to go?
I can go.
Yeah, you can go.
Okay.
Okay, you have 3 minutes.
First of all, we didn't define which level of school. So I think we would both agree that it may not be an appropriate topic for elementary school. However, I would offer that the concept of gender identity is not a new concept. For thousands of years across many, many cultures, there has been recognition that there are people who do not fit the standard mold of male and female. And so the concept of gender identity has actually existed for thousands of years across multiple cultures.
I think that there you're conflating the existence of people with disorders of sexual development who physically exceed what is typical for male and female with the idea that there's been this long recognition of an internal sense inside of a person who is actually totally normal. They're totally typical in terms of how their body looks and how their development looks, but for whatever reason they want to be something that they're not. I don't think that it should be taught as fact or as true or as science. And it was presented that way to me when I was in college. And as a result of that, I then pursued medical treatments that left me with chronic health problems, including osteopenia from the bone loss from the hormones. And so I think that it's very harmful to teach this concept at any level outside of a comparative religions class, perhaps. But it shouldn't be taught as like this is the cutting edge science and this is true. I don't think it should be taught as true at any level of school.
So I'm hearing a lot in your statement, which speaks to teaching as science, teaching as true. Do you believe that it's a good idea to withhold information or hide information about things that have happened, for example, in history? And just to talk about what sort of cultural things I'm thinking about like the Hijri in India. I'm thinking about like two-spirit people in the first peoples of America.
Some of them.
Right.
Some of them had had a Bear Dash tradition, and
Yeah.
in other tribes there was historical records that they didn't have such a tradition, and in fact they didn't like the tradition.
Yeah, but the fact that that exists and is, I would say, an undeniable fact of history, do you think that those facts should be hidden?
I don't think it should be hidden necessarily, but I do think that teaching it as though it's true when it's a religious concept, and different cultures have always had, like different cultures have long had conceptions of deities, but I don't think that should be taught as a fact that like we found out through these brain scans that deities exist. or anything like that. The fact that different cultures have had different beliefs that may not be backed up by science isn't evidence that the beliefs are true.
Granted, but I think there's a different standard of evidence
I'll
between...
let you finish your sentence, and then we're out of time.
I think there's a different standard of evidence between proving that a deity outside of oneself exists versus expressing your personal experience of your identity.
All right, everybody go back to the neutral. All right, new claim. Young people need transgender role models. Move. All right, we're going to do something different. So you're going to switch sides and go to the strongly disagree. And who would like to try to go to the absolutely agree?
All right, I'll try.
Okay. All right, have a conversation. Try to persuade the other one that the views that you don't believe are correct.
Okay, so I think young people need trans role models. So a young transgender child or transgender adolescent needs to see a trans adult thriving and needs to know that their transness is normal, that it's healthy, that it's acceptable, and that they can live a happy life medicalized.
I disagree. I think that trans is a dysfunction. It is not something that we should reify into an actual thing. And so having role models artificially encourages something that should not be encouraged.
Or having public transgender figures means that these young transgender children and adolescents, they feel comfortable coming out. We saw it with Jazz Jennings when the I Am Jazz show was aired. Whole classes or whole, high school grades, 12 kids, 13 kids coming out as trans after they had watched Jazz Jennings. So that shows that they're comfortable and feel accepted and they can come out and be who they are.
Okay, new claim. People should be allowed to change their sex on legal documents to reflect their gender identity. Move. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. Somebody is gonna go over to the strongly agree, and you're gonna make arguments that you think someone who would stand on the strongly agree mat would make, and we're gonna see if they match his arguments. Would you like to do that? Okay, so go to the strongly agree. Okay, someone stand on the absolutely disagree.
I'll go with that.
Okay.
Sure. Okay.
Okay, someone standing on that mat, what argument would they give? Why would they be standing there?
Somebody standing on this mat would argue that a person, especially after medicalization, looks like the target gender, the target sex category, and therefore requiring them to keep the original sex on their identification will lead the identification to be rejected and may open them up to discrimination, harassment, and other maltreatment. And further, if you accept the concept of gender dysphoria, it will trigger the gender dysphoria, and then this will have allegedly catastrophic effects on their mental health, and this could lead to behaviors that are dangerous to self or others.
Okay, is that why you're there?
It's not, but it's almost a better reason.
Oh, that's a better reason than the reason you had. Is that reason so good that you'd be willing to move to absolutely agree?
Yeah.
Okay. What is your reason for standing there?
So for me, it's like, I think but most of the time it's like we're allowing men to say that they're women, and then we're allowing men into women's spaces, sometimes in prisons or bathrooms or other places where I feel like they could have nefarious reasons, because it doesn't mean that they have to be medicalized. Because if we're going at gender ID, they can be any man, and this has happened to me in real life, where I enter a bathroom and there's a 6'3" construction worker who says they're a woman with a penis. I don't necessarily feel comfortable in that situation. So I do feel that women may not really go for this concept in general. I personally don't feel like it's safe for women when men identify as women in situations where they're literally not women, though. So that's kind of how I feel.
Do you have a response to that? If you believe that and you were standing there?
The response I would give if I believe this would be that that you're really objecting to male sexual predators, which are way more likely to be cis men, and the cis men don't need to identify as trans or present as trans. So why are we punishing these innocent trans-identifying men, these innocent trans women, and forcing them to endure this lifetime of discrimination and harassment and maltreatment and dysphoria? And having their IDs rejected, just so that you can imagine that you feel safer and not have to like glance over and wonder about what sex another person is. You know, some women look like men already, and especially trans men. Are you saying that you want the trans men to come in, or do you want Buck Angel to come into the women's room? Wouldn't that upset you? And that your emotions surrounding who else is in your space are less important than allowing these men to have this function of an ID that seems to match their appearance.
Was that accurate, what she said?
Roughly, yes.
Roughly, okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to distill that down, and this may not be exactly correct. Can you explain to them why your safety, your physical safety, is more important than the emotional comfort of somebody? You could tell her.
I do think many women have dealt with men being kind of aggressive towards them. So I don't think that their feelings matter as much as my safety, or any woman's safety for that matter.
Why?
Because if we were to get harmed, then I think it would destroy the trans movement to begin with. But honestly, I just think it's dangerous, ultimately. Because I do feel that there are definitely going to be some people who are going to be like, oh, I could just be trans now, and I can go from a male prison to a female prison, and I could do the same crimes that I was getting incarcerated for to women in prison who are even more vulnerable than women on the outside.
Do you agree with that? Are you willing to sacrifice the physical safety of a certain number of women if it will safeguard the emotional safety of trans women going into women's spaces?
Definitely not. I just don't think that that's reasonable, because they already have the advantage of being a man, so they're stronger than women. It's like, and then you're putting them in with real, like, I say real women. I hate to say that, but that's the truth. And then we're less safe. But they're like better off, and you see that in everything, in sports. Like they're outperforming biological women and things like that, yeah. But I definitely don't agree that women's safety should be sacrificed for their emotional well-being.
Okay, so you've heard both of these sides. Do you have, can you come up to the neutral? Do you have a question for each one?
While I was hearing what you had to say, I kept looking at the slightly disagree, thinking, should I move over to that mat? And what I was thinking about was like, I think you make a good point. Like, there could be bad actors, right? Someone could cheat the system. I'm wondering if there's some sort of alternate solution that might work for everybody, that might satisfy everyone.
I don't know. It's like you have to like either buy into the idea of trans or not. So as far as I'm concerned, men are men and women are women. So like just believing you're a woman is just, I don't know. It doesn't change the fact that you're a man entering a woman's space.
Would you be, because you said you thought about it, what prevented you from moving?
I guess uncertainty. Like maybe there's some sort of system, alternate system we could have in place that would prevent bad actors from abusing the system. I don't know what that looks like. I don't have a solution there, but.
Would you like to ask a question? Can you guys swap, please?
Yep. Yeah, like you heard her talk about safety and potential bad actors, right? Do you think that there might be a better solution that will work for everybody, that will protect her safety while also protecting the interests of trans people?
Me saying that there's a better solution would be first to have to acknowledge that there's a problem. And the thing that I've come to, and I was sitting back there on the mat and realizing what it says on my, that's in here, what it says on my driver's license, what my gender is not what's preventing me from coming into the bathroom when you're in there. If I'm a predator, having an official diagnosis and a change in my passport is not the thing that's keeping me from going into or not going into the bathroom. That has always seemed to me to be a pretty far reach in terms of an argument. Now, I do understand that women perceiving somebody who doesn't seem like a woman does feel unsafe. I'm not sure that I have a good solution for that. Well, no, I take that back. Because I've been many places, particularly in Europe, where the norm is to have gender-free bathrooms, where the only gendered space, well, there are no gendered spaces. If you want to go do something where genitals need to be exposed, you go into a private stall, and everything else is common. So I think having a better structure for bathrooms, now, is that the only gendered space? No. I think different solutions need to be come up with for different spaces.
I'm gonna swap you in. Come on in, and you go back. Oh yeah, and then you come back too. Is there a point that you'd want to make that hasn't been made so far? Or is there a comment that you would want to make to either one of them that hasn't been made?
I think maybe just to comment more on the third bathroom option maybe, or just the one bathroom. I mean, it has a lot to do with culture, I think, and sexualizing men and women. And, you know, if you can eliminate that sexualization, you might have a safer area. How you could do that, I couldn't tell you. You're not going to. Not today.
So why are you on the absolutely agree for that? Not changing sex
I guess
on
I
legal
would
documents?
probably move over a little bit, but
It's a
not
free
much.
country. If you want to move, you can move.
Because like I said, to be able to get to the point where you feel safe, I don't think we're there. That's why I'm here.
Okay, all right. We're going to swap you out and then you in. So why are you on the absolutely disagree?
Well, we've strayed a little bit from the actual claim, I think,
Yeah,
because we were just
agreed.
talking about legal documents, and I
Correct.
think legal documents should always reflect reality. So if you're male, your legal documents must say so. Just as I could identify as 6'2", it wouldn't make me 6'2". I'm still 5'2". Legal documents record facts, but I want to talk about spaces.
All right, let's reset to the neutral. New claim. We should segregate bathrooms and changing rooms based on sex. Move. Okay, come to the neutral. Decide amongst yourself who's going to go to the mat in front of you. We haven't heard from you very much, but is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay?
I was kind of thinking the same thing.
Okay, I'll let you have a three-way conversation. You have 4 minutes.
So I think the bathrooms and changing areas should absolutely be segregated on the basis of sex. And it's a pretty mechanistic explanation, which is that males produce one kind of cell and females produce another kind of cell. And when they combine, that has horrific health consequences for the female specifically. It never has consequences for the male. Further, men can eject these cells across the room. So we need a screen when we're in states of undress, at least. So therefore, they should be segregated on the basis of sex.
I want to share kind of a personal anecdote. I do street epistemology. I went to a campus in the western of Wisconsin, and I talked to this young lady, and she told me about her college's bathroom policy, and I thought it was pretty intriguing. I always looked at bathrooms as you either have to use the self-identity way, or you have to do the sex, the biological way, right? The school's policy was a little bit different. So on all the floors except one, it was by biology, right? It was males there, females there, no exceptions. And then they had one floor where all the bathrooms you could self-identify. You could use whichever bathroom you were most comfortable with. And that really struck me as an interesting idea. Like, I thought it kind of worked out. I think it allowed everybody who attended the college to be comfortable. And I think it just solved the problem to this. It was a solution to the problem that they were having.
What was the problem that they were having?
Individuals being uncomfortable with other individuals in their restroom.
So they solved the problem of women not being comfortable with men in their restroom by mixing the sexes in the restroom? I don't understand how that solved the problem.
I think you may have misunderstood.
I must have.
Like, let's say it had 4 floors. 3 of those floors, the bathrooms on them, only females who were born female could use those restrooms. Males who were born males could only use that restroom. So you always had that option to use that restroom. But then on one of the floors, if you were to, go up the stairs, go down the stairs, whatever, those restrooms on that floor were available to anybody, however you identified.
Got it. I do agree that there should be a single stall unisex disability third option anywhere that there's multi-stall sex segregated spaces. And that's not just for trans people, but it's also for anybody who has a disability that requires more security, more time, more privacy. And so having that option would not out anybody. You wouldn't be exposed as a disabled person or as a trans person by using that. It would just be, oh, he's using or she's using that third option.
Okay, so you'd be in favor of these other solutions, adding an extra unisex bathroom, for example.
Yeah, but it needs to be a single stall with a door that shuts. I don't support, even for disability stalls, I don't think there should be a disability stall in the larger one because I just don't think it's safe or private adequately, because when you're disabled, you might have complex disabilities like involving ostomy bags. You never know. It should be something where they have that privacy and security, and they can fully lock the door and people can't access it when they're like off of their wheelchair, for instance. I also think that would be a great solution for people who have modified their bodies to the point where they don't seem to match their IDs anymore.
Right, which because I'm on the neutral, which is probably odd, because I'm normally over there. The reason that I'm on the neutral is because I think we should have female only, absolutely no question, female only. But then I think testosterone is so powerful that women who have taken it can look indistinguishable from men, and they don't actually belong in the female-only spaces because they would make women uncomfortable. So I think I would segregate bathrooms female-only and mixed sex. I don't know if that means I should be on neutral or somewhere else.
Where should she be based on that reasoning?
I think that it sounds like you support single-sex spaces,
for
so
women,
I think that you would, yeah.
But the other one would be mixed, because I don't think the women who look
don't want to
like
protect the men, they're
belong
fine.
in the female space, so that would make the men's mixed sex.
I think that we're in agreement, because I think that we believe that women should have female-only spaces, and that also, if you've modified your body with drugs, that your choices at that point are going to be constant harassment and having your ID challenged or using a third space. It just seems like a reasonable accommodation for the disability of gender dysphoria and/or the disability of having done so many drugs that you look different.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you're regarded as having a disability, you're legally disabled.
All right, let's go back to the neutral. It is okay to refuse to use someone's preferred pronouns. Move. All right, come to the absolutely forward and the absolutely. You can decide who wants to do it. You have 3 minutes for a conversation.
So I come to this as somebody that works with people who have language issues, and sometimes those language issues can specifically affect pronouns and other function words. And so there's a segment of the population already that is going to have a more difficult time using pronouns that don't match a person's appearance, or which are not standard for the language, such as neopronouns, or using plural pronouns for an individual. And so I think that asking people to do that, especially requiring them to do it at work or school, is going to stratify by that ability status. It's also going to stratify by age, because as you age, you have cognitive changes that also make it more difficult. And so that means that people with disabilities and older people and people that speak English as a second language, they're all going to be relatively marginalized and subject to negative social consequences for their inability to do this performance. And then fundamentally, I feel like it's a violation of my religious freedom to compel me to pretend that I think that somebody is a male when they're clearly a female, or vice versa. And therefore, for those reasons, I do think that it's acceptable to decline to use somebody's preferred pronouns.
So I think there's a different semantic difference here between refuse and require. I agree we should not mandate or enforce that people use somebody's preferred pronouns. I also know that nobody that I know in the trans community is going to fault somebody if they're making an effort and if there's a legitimate reason that they can't or forget to use their correct pronoun. But refusing to use someone's correct pronoun, I see as analogous to me calling you by a different name. So I'm just going to call you Kelly for the rest of the day. I'm going to refuse to use the name that you use to identify yourself. I see that as analogous.
Got it. The reason I don't see that as entirely the same is that when I hear what you're saying, and I've heard that before, that people will understand. I shouldn't have to disclose that I had a head injury. I shouldn't have to disclose that I speak English as a second language. That should be something where I shouldn't need to ask for those accommodations in order to describe the world as I see it. And further, I don't think that a lot of people who are claiming that they would be okay with it actually would be if they decided in their head that, oh, you're not actually trying enough. And I don't think disabled people should have to try to do things that they know that are not going to work indefinitely, forever, or apologize for the fact that they can't do these things. I think that I should be protected in referring to somebody based on their reality, whereas if somebody is saying that I have a different name that I have, or that I have a pronoun that does not match my sex, I think that I should have a cause of action against them for libel and defamation.
All right,
because my name is not Kelly.
We're at time. We're going to swap you in. You have 3 minutes for a conversation.
This is kind of responding to her point, so I don't want to strawman you. But if I said my name on my birth certificate or on my driver's license is Nicholas, I like to be called Nick, or let's say I want to be called Skipper. Would you refuse to call me Skipper because it's not on my ID?
I would not. Nicknames are different. So our pronoun use is, we don't even think about it. Man is he, woman is she. It's instinctive. It's programmed into us from a very early age, and we don't even think about it. So you have to, respecting someone's preferred pronouns means you have to deliberately deny the evidence before your eyes. Normally, most people don't pass as members of the opposite sex. The reason I do refuse to use preferred pronouns at all times, though, is because they're the language of gender identity ideology. And I think gender identity ideology is a poison that has done immeasurable harm. And therefore, I won't use the language of it. Mm-hmm. Do you want to say something?
Sorry, I want to go back to something that you said that I really liked, which is you talked about how we're taught from an early age to use she and he. And so I think what you're saying is that the pronouns aren't innate. The pronouns are something that we are taught and we learn. And it's perfectly fine if we learn something different, right? You've grown up in a situation where you're used to calling people he and she. How would a world be different if we took a different approach to pronouns? Let's say all pronouns were genderless. Would you reject a world where all pronouns were genderless?
I don't think we can rewrite the rules of the English language and have everyone learn a whole new system just to validate the identities of a tiny few. And I don't think we should, because it's such a poisonous idea that we shouldn't be supporting it, we shouldn't be promoting it. I think when we're using preferred pronouns, we're untethering ourselves from reality, and I think there are costs from sacrificing reality. And that is, if you're calling a man she, you're sending a message to young people that humans can change sex, that this man has become a woman, and that leaves vulnerable young people in a stage of identity development to think that they can change sex.
Okay, we're going to pause. What would it take to change your mind? What would you have to hear, if you're on neutral, from either one of them, not to make you go all the way, but to either the slightly agree, what would you need, or to the slightly disagree? What would you need to hear from them?
Oh, here we go.
Go ahead.
I think I'm kind of going to slightly agree, although the reason why I am neutral is because I do have trans identifying members of my family. And when I'm in that situation, I just feel like I have to respect how they feel. You know what I mean? Like I feel, so it's awkward for me. However, I will say something that Sierra, a point that she made, my parents are not American. So my parents both are from Latin America, and they constantly mix up he and she. So like when he, who's she now, is there, it's awkward for them because they do it all the time anyway. They call me he, you know what I mean? They just in the mid-sentence, because it's English as a second language. So I do feel like him having that expectation that they're going to change the way they are to respect his current pronoun situation is awkward.
So but you didn't move.
I didn't, because I still feel like in reality, I would probably behave the same way. Like I would probably try to respect his pronouns, except that my parents can't do it. But I do see that like some people probably cannot physically keep changing things.
Okay, so in a sentence, what would you need to move you one Matt to the slightly agree? You can say nothing, that's fine too.
No, I think I would stay at neutral, because I just don't think I would, in reality, ever change my position on it. I think I would probably stay using their pronouns, even if I don't agree with them.
What would it take you to move to the slightly disagree?
If I knew more people and I, interacted with them, I probably would use their preferred pronouns. In reality, I think I would do that.
Okay, what would it take you to move to the slightly agree?
I don't know, I was teetering actually on both sides, to be honest, and I think there's just an emotional factor to it, like she was saying. So like she had, like your cousin or, a family, somebody you care about. You want to respect them, and, you can have conversations with them and still say, I don't agree with you, but you can still call them by that to their face just to air out the space, if you will.
So is there anything that would cause you to go to the slightly disagree or the slightly agree?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thanks. Go back to the neutral. New claim. Taking the concept of gender identity seriously promotes homophobia. Move. So could you go to the absolutely agree and absolutely disagree, and could you go to the neutral, and you are the questioner.
Oh, cool.
Try to, if you can, to the best of your ability, do 50-50.
Cool, will do. Nick, what is, when you hear this claim,
Yeah.
what do you think of?
It seems incoherent. I don't understand the connection.
Okay, so the whole thing just doesn't really
It just doesn't
make
scan
sense.
for me. I would need to hear arguments in favor.
What do you think Mia is thinking?
Shouldn't you be on the neutral then?
No, because I disagree that taking the concept of gender identity seriously promotes homophobia.
Okay.
I don't think that it does that.
Okay.
So what do I think would be Mia's best reason for
why
that?
is she over there?
I know that Mia has beliefs about male and female brains, and when a brain is in a man is more feminized, her belief is that this is often an indicator that someone is homosexual. And so maybe Mia believes that somebody who has a feminized brain is being labeled as trans, but we're actually hiding the fact that they're homosexual. Do I have that close?
Not
Okay.
even slightly, no.
Go
So
ahead.
I'll explain why. If you take the concept of gender identity seriously in its modern form, that means that your gender identity is what makes you a man or a woman. That's where we are, right? Your sex body doesn't matter. If you have a female gender identity, you are a woman. And if you have a male gender identity, you're a man. Doesn't matter about your parts. The next step from that is there are heterosexual men in society who believe that they have a female gender identity. So therefore, they believe they are women. But because they're attracted to women, they therefore believe they're lesbians. These are heterosexual men, I'm not making this up. They think they're lesbians. We are at the point where lesbians get banned from lesbian dating apps for specifying female only. Lesbians are persecuted for refusing these men, which to me is extremely homophobic. And it's not just the dating apps. In Australia last week or the week before, the Australian Human Rights Commission ruled that lesbians cannot meet without these men. They cannot meet without heterosexual men who think they're women, who think they're lesbians. Also homophobic if you're forcing lesbians to accept men. It goes the other way in that some women who think they're men also think they're gay men, and they invade gay men's spaces. And then there's one more angle in that the transgender children, so-called, because they are mostly future homosexuals, if you take the concept of gender identity seriously in children, you usher them onto a medical pathway that is the equivalent of a modern-day conversion therapy, because you're medically converting the bodies of gay and lesbian adolescents who would otherwise have grown up healthy and whole if you didn't have this concept of gender identity. That's homophobic to me.
If we remove some of these labels that are associated with people who identify as trans, and we don't label them as lesbian or gay or straight for that matter, would that solve this problem of homophobia?
Well, yeah, if you take away the concept of the male lesbian and the female gay man, as ludicrous as they are, then sure, that would eliminate the homophobia. But by doing that, you are then saying that these individuals, you're saying that these men are not women, and therefore, so that's transphobic bigotry to the trans activists. You can't do that.
Was that something Mia said that had you shift confidence?
Yeah, so I'm realizing that there are some very real issues here, and it's a very complex issue. I'm still struggling with the concept of that being promoting homophobia, but I see how homophobic actions could proceed from that. So I'm willing to soften my stance on that. I still think amount of it happening, incidents and intention play a role, but I would need to do a lot more thinking about.
Okay. So let me ask you a question. You're neutral. You heard all this. Did anything they say cause you to move?
No, because I'm stuck on the word promote. Like I said, I think it uncovers homophobia, and I think it shows, but I don't know that it's promoting per se. Like that, it's just the word. I think that's why I'm stuck.
Would you like to address that?
I don't actually like the word promote in there either. I think it is homophobia. I don't think it actually promotes it. Well, it does promote it because, we have the situation in Australia is that they have actively taken away the rights of lesbians to gather without the presence of men. And that is homophobia, and it gives license to all of the trans activists to persecute these lesbians if they refuse. Well, they continue to object to this.
Okay, I'm going to make a word change. You do not have to move if you do not want to move. Taking the concept of gender identity seriously is homophobia. Take a minute.
I would be slightly agree.
Okay, what made you move?
Well, wait.
Taking the concept.
I guess I don't really know. I don't think that made it any
You
better.
want to go back?
To be honest,
Yeah.
no.
So let me make sure if I get part of the argument correct. So if you tell gay, especially gay kids, you're not really gay, you're not really a lesbian, you're really a man, but you're just trapped in the wrong body. You have a man's brain, you're not gay. Is that either the erasure of homosexuality?
Yeah, that's homophobia for sure.
That's what they're doing.
Yeah.
I mean, they're
Okay.
not telling them that they're not gay, but they are telling them that they are, take a lesbian, they're telling her that she's a boy. And by telling her that, they naturally are transitioning her into a heterosexual boy or a heterosexual man. That's conversion therapy.
So for me, because I grew up very much a tomboy in male, I work in a male industry. I work in the RV industry in the service aspect in body shops. And, I am very much a woman, identify as a woman. I dress in male clothing, so I do get misgendered a lot in public. I let it happen because that's just the way that they see me. And it doesn't really hurt my feelings, to be honest, and I don't know why. I think that's me individually, and that's where the idea of homophobia is more or less an individual thing, I feel like,
Okay.
to be honest.
Okay. Could
And
you?
that's why I'm also stuck.
And then I'm going to give you an opportunity to address that. I think that's a really important point. The idea of homophobia, the trans ideology isn't homophobic. Individuals are homophobic. So I don't want to put more nuance than is there.
You're
but
pretty much right, yeah.
Okay, so it's a property of people, not a property of like ideology.
Because my grandparents are very much Republican, very much homophobic. However, me and multiple of my cousins are gay. They'll tell me they love me. They'll give me hugs. Yet they post on Facebook all this hate, and it's very, very conflicting. Like especially for like my cousin right now, he's basically disowned the family, and I'm stuck on a line. I mean, I moved away to get away from it and, not subject myself to that. But
sorry about that.
yeah, it is what it is, I guess. And again, it's a lot of the individual and like where you grew up and things like that.
Did you want to address that idea that the ideology isn't homophobic? It's like people, homophobia is a property of people. It's not a property of a ideological system.
Yeah, that's
Yes, but then an ideology that directly attacks the gay community, is that not homophobic?
It is. I agree with you there. Yes, and that's why I kind of I'm in the middle.
So,
here.
comments on this?
No, I'm just going to double down on what I said. It's a very complex topic, and I think there's a lot of individual cases where some of these things happen. Just as a personal anecdote, my non-binary kid considers themselves a lesbian. There's a conflict there, right? So I think it's a very difficult space to navigate, and I think we need better tools, and I think we need to look at individual cases. And I'm skeptical about some of the cases you're talking about where you would say we're pushing someone to transition rather than to admit they're homosexual. I'm skeptical that there's a lot of that goes on. I would definitely reject that. I don't see people getting pressured to transition. What I see is people with a drive to transition, and then I believe that they should be able to choose who they decide to date. And things that are outside of that, right, where there's pressure one way or the other, right, those are the complicated cases that we need to look at.
All right, I'm going to just do a few quick ones. Could you go back to the neutral, please? If I could wave a magic wand and gender ideology would disappear from the face of the earth, now and forever forward, I would wave that wand. Go. If I could wave a magic wand and gender ideology would disappear from the world, I would wave that wand.
Yeah,
Oh, it's a running. It's a running. Wow, interesting. Okay, go back to the neutral. Adults who undergo surgery to transition should be treated with respect. Move. Okay, go back to the neutral. I have seriously thought at one point in my life I was trans. Move. Okay, sorry, come on up. So at one point in your life you thought you were trans.
Yes.
Do you feel comfortable telling us about that?
Sure. I mean,
Okay.
so it kind of goes back to something he said. I grew up in a really Catholic kind of household. My parents are not from here, and I'm gay, so that was really hard for me. I mean, they ended up throwing me out of my house and that kind of thing. But I didn't want to be gay, so I was like, maybe if I like women, I'm a guy. And I was young. I was only 18 at the time. So I do feel like that does happen to people. And that's how I ended up finding her TikTok, actually, because she's talking about things that I experienced.
And what was it that the social pressure from your parents to not be gay?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I don't think being trans would be any better, believe it or not. But I guess at the time I was like, you want to correct yourself and be right for your parents and be the right kid and somebody that they
But it
really love.
wouldn't be sinning though if from a religious household, like if you were really trapped in the wrong body and you were a man and you want to have sex with a woman, that wouldn't be sinning.
Exactly. So there's like a way of correcting who you are. But I think that's why I do feel like the trans stuff is homophobia.
And so did you have hormones or surgery or?
Yes, I was put on a couple different hormones in my early 20s on top of each other. And so this had the effect of suppressing brain function, suppressing ovary function, and that just kind of caused different organ systems to wither. And so I was diagnosed last year with osteopenia, for instance. I'm 37, I shouldn't have bone issues yet, but I do because of gender-affirming care. And so I was struggling also with same-sex attraction. I had issues where my religion, and I went to a religious school at around the time I was going to puberty that was anti-gay. And those messages and other messages I got from my family, they never have kicked me out, but I've gotten messages, and I was just really struggling with all that, and it did seem like it would make a lot more sense if I could just be a boy, be a man. And so when I got to college and I was told that, like, well, manhood is really just about the performance, and if you perform manhood, then you become a heterosexual man instead of a same-sex attracted woman, and it just seemed like a way out. You know, it's a way of making yourself right. And I think that when you're same-sex attracted to, you also have really early conditioning that happens where you're paying attention to how women are reacting to you rather than men, and there's just a different dynamic, and that can shape your personality and end up with the classic HSTS, like homosexual, transsexual, where your mannerisms might even be culturally conditioned, and it seems like you just fit better.
So you're nodding your head.
I think, like, I just suffered from, my parents don't even mean to be so homophobic, you know what I mean? But it's just, I think they love me, and but I don't think they want a gay kid. That's pretty much what it comes down to. And I think when you feel like that, you're like, wow, maybe I could be different. I think the trans stuff really hits when you feel that way. I think it's dangerous almost. I'm really glad that I didn't go through with anything.
I have 2 gay kids. I have 2. I'm batting at 100.
Yeah.
5,000. What is it, batting at 1,000? I don't know anything about baseball. Okay, well, thanks for participating today in our new form. It's the first time we've tried it out. Did anybody change their mind about something specific? A specific claim or a specific thing that was said?
I think I became a little bit stronger in my opinion that you should use the correct pronouns for an individual.
All right. Anybody else?
No, I'm pretty rigid. I have my ideas.
I feel like I have a lot more sense for how deep the nuance and complexity is in this area, how intersectional it is. And I've definitely taken away some homework to check out some of the claims that Mia has made about WPATH and things like that.
Final general comments? Anybody have anything?
Yeah, I'd like to say something. Participating in this group, I'm just really pleased with how everybody was so cordial, treating everyone with respect.
I agree.
And that's really what I want to see in the world.
I agree.
I see a lot of bitterness with talking about subjects like this. And I think if we all, not just the people in this room, could have more conversations like this, I think we could find solutions to problems, and it'd be a better place to live.
Yeah, I agree.
+1.
Yeah, just for the record, Lita genuinely tried to get people pro-trans, like every conceivable venue, money, couldn't do it. So anyway, thanks everyone for coming. Thanks.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Peter.
Shake hands.
Good job.
Peace of Christ. Peace of Christ.